go ahead and call to order the City of Burlington's Board of Finance meeting on Wednesday, May 28th, 2025 at 5:31 p.m. So this is a Board of Finance meeting, but it's an informational meeting related to our fiscal year 26 budget presentations by department, and this is the last one in the series. We'll have the remaining departments have yet to present, go through their budgets. To those who are here presenting, we do this in about a 20-minute block, 10 minutes or so for presentations, 10 for Q&A, just to keep us moving. We have a lot of departments left to go through tonight. But we do start first with the agenda and a public forum. So first, is there a motion on the agenda? Moved by Councilor Carpenter. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Barlow. Any discussion on the agenda before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And moving to public forum, it is the practice of the Board of Finance to first go to folks in the room to provide public comment, and then we will go online. And if we have multiple people here for public comment, we'll use City Council rules in terms of time limits, but we can be a little bit flexible here, usually in Board of Finance. So is anyone in the room looking to address Board of Finance? Great, I see two. So let's go first, and if you wouldn't mind coming up and using a mic, and maybe you can, do you mind sitting in between us here? Okay, great, welcome. Welcome to the table, and we'll have roughly 2 minutes. I'm not gonna be,
I won't take that long.
yeah, I don't have the big timer, and I'm not gonna use it anyway. But welcome if you wanna I will not do that. If you just wanna start with introducing yourself, and then go ahead.
Sure. My name is Lori Kettler, and I was a member of the task force that was appointed by the City Council 4 years ago to address concerns from the community about animals. That was 4 years ago. 2 years ago, we presented a 71-page report to the City Council that was then sent to the Ordinance Committee. The Ordinance Committee spent a number of months going through and deciding what it would recommend to the full council. And last month or 2 months ago, the full council voted to approve many of those recommendations. And it's my understanding that 2 of the key recommendations that were voted on and approved by the City Council are not in the budget for the police department, unless something has changed since I last spoke with Chief Burke about it. And that would be the requirement that there be an animal shelter for all animals, just not dogs. And the other one addresses the need to have a dedicated animal control officer. So I just wanted to express my concern about that. There was a lot of work that went into this for many, many years. It's gone all the way to the process. And it wasn't the intent of the task force or the Ordinance Committee to make this, to just have the police department say, no, we're not going to fund it. And the provision or the ordinance for the shelter in particular is mandatory. It's not discretionary. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Want to join us up here at the table? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Richard Hilliard, Ward 1 resident, 25 years engagement with the Ward 1 MPA, so we see quite a lot of budget stuff and financial stuff, etc. I'm here to talk about the budget, but I apologize as I have a conflict and can't stay for your full meeting. And first, not to do with the budget necessarily, but I'd like to personally express my appreciation for Gary Rogers for the 28 plus years of organizing, any coaching, community engagement, a lot. I reckon he must have touched in an unfailingly positive way at least 10,000 families, maybe 20,000 neighborhoods and children in the city. With his departure, we lose far more than any money saved on a payroll, not least an investment in our future. Now,
just like regular public comment. Right in the middle of that. There you go.
There we go. I have no sense that any communications from the mayor or reports in the press that we're doing anything significant to gain revenue by enforcing laws, rules, ordinances that are already on the city's books. So we don't have to invent the wheel. The wheel is already invented and working well in other places. For instance, I was shocked 2 years ago to be told by a long-serving Burlington police officer that the city derived $50,000 in 2021-22 in annual parking revenue, I beg your pardon, in annual traffic enforcement revenue, but 24 times that, 1.2 million in parking fines. So I know it's city policy not to do traffic enforcement at this stage. But in the interests of the police budget, and at least as important, public safety, I exhumed a report from a city police lieutenant from 2017, which was also read out in police commission at the same time with Chief Del Pozo present. The lieutenant reported to me, I worked a sharp detail today on East Avenue for 5 hours of traffic enforcement. I ended up issuing approximately $1,700 in tickets. And he goes on to describe various offenses that he witnessed. So that is, at using the CPI, that is $22.75 for 5 hours a day using inflation from 2017 to 2025. So for 365 days a year, that would be $830K for 5 hours a day. But even allowing for the cost of manpower and equipment, wouldn't the Exchequer like that? Obviously, you could contract the hours, increase the hours, concentrate on hotspots, regardless. But I think that's money that we're not realizing that we should be. Some of you know that I was knocked down twice in 5 minutes in the early evening of late November last year, once on a Willard Street pedestrian crossing by a vehicle that was turning right at a stop sign without stopping, a few minutes later on a North Street sidewalk. No serious injuries, drivers being careless because they're allowed to be. But I stand on a street corner for 90 minutes a day, every day, and the standard of driving in the city is terrible. Lots of it is careless, quite a bit dangerous, and some of it is just plain reckless. A squad car in the vicinity of dangerous spots in the city will go a long way, but drivers know they can do what they like with impunity.
And Mr. Hilliard, we're getting close to time. If you would wrap up your final thought.
Another couple of points.
Thank you.
I just like to see us running the city like a business. The public doesn't really know what this city's cash flow looks like, but city employees say anecdotally that late payers have to run up thousands of dollars or more in tickets, bills, taxes, etc. before action is taken. Now, that is anecdotal. I can't vouch for that, obviously. In an age when citizens pay $15,000 to $30,000 in interest rates, shouldn't we be applying significant late fees, something to encourage timely payment, maybe do a task force on accounts receivable? And let's look at redelineating properties that are not paying city taxes. I don't know whether these days it's 40% of all properties, 50%, I don't know. If we're going to give golf clubs hundreds of thousands of dollars in relief, what is the quid pro quo? And what about assessment relief? Finally, a city councillor kindly asked me recently what I would do to attract more business, and I really don't have an answer. It's not really my area of expertise, but looking at facts is. But I would think that some touchy-feely stuff to make businesses feel appreciated might at least keep them here. And we know that all business people, even those that sign 200 signature letters, they're not all choir boys either. But we want the businesses to stay here, unlike Champlain College and a day's worth of UVM graduation bolting to Essex. Why? The easiest sales that we all know are to current customers and clients, and we should at least focus daily on expressing appreciation for those that we still have that are valued.
Thank you very much.
That's that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Is anyone else in the room who would like to address Board of Finance? Okay, seeing none. Going online, is anyone from the public here to address Board of Finance? Former City Councilor Sharon Busher, the floor is yours.
Hi. Hi, good evening. It's too bad it's a good day and not raining that you're having this meeting, but so be it. I'm going to speak to the departments that are presenting tonight. Permitting and inspection. I was part of the city council when planning and zoning got separated, and I understood why it went to permitting and inspection, because code enforcement was always bifurcated. It was always code enforcement for building codes, etc. And then there were the zoning violations. And so I understood there was no perfect spot. But what happened was that communication from the part of the department that creates policy to the part of the department that reviews applications and applies those ordinances to applications are separate. And communication, I don't think, is strong. I follow things pretty carefully. And so I see the struggle of the DRB or the DAB when they are dealing with applications. And so I was hoping that in this process, there would be a delineation of better communication to tie in those two areas. And I didn't see it. So if it's there, I'll look forward to understanding. And I know you're not going to speak to this minutia detail, but I would look forward to being pointed in the direction so I can get an answer to my question. The other thing is that initially, Burlington City Arts and CEDO were actually funded not by the general fund, but Burlington City Arts was really driven by the money that they raised, the donations, the grants, etc. CEDO the same. And over time, there was a gap, and the city stepped in, and there was general fund dollars added to their budgets so that they could continue. I wonder if there's a cap on the amount of general fund dollars we feel we can afford to give to those budgets. And I understand that it would have to be something that would be looked at pretty carefully, because if indeed there was an aspect that was generating a lot of revenue for the city, certainly we wouldn't want to cap that. But I am concerned about that. I'm concerned about when we make changes and we don't actually set limits or triggers to rethink or reset. And I am unaware of any. And with the merger of putting CEDO back together, what I feel has been missing for a long time is the Ron Redman of the Church Street Marketplace, a person who really is dedicated to the businesses and Church Street and some of the side streets, obviously, with the businesses. I don't see that addressed, and I really feel that in the last few years, they have lost out in so many ways. And so I was hoping to see that strengthened. I don't see that. And the last comment I'll have from, I'm looking at what you provided. I don't know all of the details or discussion, and I know this is somewhat fluid, but I see positions in the org chart for CEDO, for the new CEDO or whatever, that have titles for individuals who held those positions that were eliminated, were let go. And that's troubling to me. I'm really worried about the loss of expertise. with affordable housing, with the Housing Trust Fund. I want to be thankful that Kelly Devine has really taken on the Church Street Marketplace, obviously Downtown Business Association, but she's really been the spokesperson for our marketplace. And I just really want the administration to try to augment that. And so many other communities around the state have such creative ideas to get people back to their downtowns, and some of them have the challenges we have with construction, et cetera. So anyways, I'm making these general comments. There's nothing specific, because I think most of what I'm saying is still fluid. And I'm looking to have the city land on a spot where we have expertise and we have efficiency and we have history and new ideas. We have a continuum of expertise and innovation and creativity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Is there anyone else online who would like to, from the public, like to speak during public forum? You can indicate by raising your hand. Okay, seeing none. I'm going to close public forum and, I'm going to close public forum. And we'll move on to our first item, which is, again, starting an informational series of updates from our remaining city departments. And our first one is permitting inspections, which we weren't able to get to last week because Bill Ward could not be in two places at once. And so now I'm going to pass it over to Bill. And again, we have about 10 minutes for presentation and 10 minutes or so for questions. Bill.
I was at the DPW commission hearing for an appeal that night, and it went much longer than all of us wanted. So I apologize for being not here last week, but I'm grateful to be here tonight, starting with the outline so you can see how the department is set up. On the left-hand side, you can see that the first two divisions, you have the housing and the zoning division and the staff members that are under that. The third division is the building trades division. When it was created, we had staff changeover. It does not have a division director by design. That may change in the future, but that's why the remaining employees in that division report directly to me. The position that I've highlighted at the bottom, we'll speak about in just a minute. That's the position that I recommended be eliminated for this upcoming fiscal year. On the highlights for last year, or I should say the current year that we're wrapping up, Scott Guston provided these numbers to me through the permitting data he ran, the 219 new residential units, and that's across the 35 different permits where those were created. On the housing and zoning side, you'll see some of that updated information in additional revenue on the enforcement side, and sort of sticking to some of the regulations, and some of them, in fact, you helped by making some changes to in the fiscal year, have led to increased revenues for us. Zoning stipulation fees, we'll speak about it in a little bit, but those were increased for this year. They'll be increased again next year. So in planning for the upcoming year, we start with that position I highlighted earlier that was highlighted in red. That's the position I recommended be eliminated. Scott Guston is the zoning division manager for that division. He had been working on the workflow for that particular employee. When that employee left in January of this year, we did an evaluation and decided that their workload wasn't sufficient to make enough work for a full-time employee. So we held the position and planned for the upcoming year. And as we reviewed our full budget, we thought that was the most appropriate way for us to add efficiency and save money on the expense side of things. But that was the result of a service inventory that position was eliminated. Some of the employee benefits have been small savings, like with dental, and I think the other one was workers' comp, some small changes there. And Of course, the continued efficiency we try to find in all of our different processes, I think allows us to do more and not add more expense on the side of the ledger for staffing, and look to find revenue for as much of that enforcement work as we can. And the other thing that we did to make sure that we were saving money is to keep the expenses where they were the previous year. And in most cases, we've done that. I've highlighted some of the comparisons just to give you an update on where we are. I think that's the revenues. There's a modest increase for the upcoming year. Some of that comes from new housing units that'll be coming online. Some of that comes from permits that we anticipate will be issued. Technical review gives us an opportunity to see projects that are coming forward, and we can anticipate that those revenue numbers should be a number that we would hit. The actuals for this year are lower than I would have expected overall for trades and zoning. However, when I reviewed what we had approved for permits and are pending for payments, the numbers are actually a little bit higher. So I put on the trade side at 61% with pending fees due, and 73% on the zoning side with the pending fees for the actuals of where we are at currently. And as one example of that, just last week we collected a trades permit fee for the old YMCA building that'll be converted to housing units. That building permit fee for the demolition and the completion of the work to create 89 new residences there, the permit itself, when the fee was paid, $362,000. So very substantial. That was not included in this initial number. So our numbers are a little better than they looked on that. But overall, the budget has a slight increase in the revenue and a slight decrease in the amount of our expenses. On the expense side, we're trying to keep things as low as we possibly can. And again, for some of the trades or zoning permit fees, if they don't come in on target, we are trying to keep our expenses limited so that we can balance that out and keep myself in good standing with Catherine. Again, the budget expense-wise is slightly less than last year, but most of that is due to staff savings from that position that we'd recommended be eliminated. I don't see any specific numbers in our budget that are directly related to federal funding, although I do think that if there were projects that were going to be completed using strictly federal funds, that may have an impact, but currently I'm not seeing those. But I wanted to put that up there as just to let you know I was thinking about that. But we also have a lot of things in place. Permits, a permit activity that things were, I'll say, permitted in previous years, not even in FY25, but a lot of activity at City Place, for example, and at the CHT building around the corner, and the former VFW site. We have larger projects that are going to be coming up. I mentioned the former building, YMCA building. We got the South End project, the Secord project, as it's been described. That's a fairly enormous project. I don't think that's an extraordinary word to call it, but it's a pretty enormous project that we will obviously be doing a lot of work on, and there'll be substantial fees associated with that. Full staffing in the upcoming part of this year. We're actually not at full staffing currently because we have a person we just hired for the zoning team that will be starting the second week of June. He was filling a vacancy when one of our other staff members took a vacancy in the trades division, and we are currently posting for a housing administrator position because our housing administrator a month ago took the open job as a housing inspector. So it's good that we're keeping quality people in the building and in our staff because they know how things work. That will help us do a better job for the upcoming year, puts our inspectors at full staff, but we will be doing interviews for the vacant position in the coming weeks, and by the start of FY26, fully staffed. So in summary, slight increase in revenues, slight decrease in our expenses, and our total number of staff will be reduced for the upcoming year by 1 full-time employee. You won't see too much of a difference from where it is now because we are currently 2 other people short. So we're filling those. I think the other big highlight for the upcoming year It started in 2025, the vacant building ordinance changed. Some of those fees kick in. They go from $750 a quarter now. They'll be $1,000 a quarter starting July 1. We're going to see further vacant building enforcement. It's possible we see our first criminal prosecution in FY26 for vacant building non-activity. I think you'll see things intensify, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Bill. We're right under 10 minutes. Excellent. Questions from counselors? Well, questions from counselors. Counselor Carpenter.
A couple. I a little bit missed why trades division don't have a leader, as opposed to having each independently. Explain that again.
Some of that comes from the seniority with the team. There was a person when the department was developed, the DPW person who had lengthy, is the only one who had a lengthy amount of time in the position and had the leadership training and the ability to step in that role. That person actually chose to retire because he'd been with the city for 25 years. So he didn't transfer over and become part of my department. Since that time, I'm operating currently with under the union contract, what's called a group leader. So I have Kim Iannelli, who's our group leader, but she's still a union member. She coordinates the activities for that team, but again, coordinates them with me. She's not a manager. So that's the basic reason for it. But again, I think it won't be long. I will be back. You may see me at some point in the near future, or whoever takes over from me in the future will want. If Kim stays, she'd be the most likely candidate for that position. But she's ironically she's next to last junior as far as the people on the team, but the team respects her. That's the reason she's group leader, but not quite ready yet to be the division manager.
Thanks. This is more of a comment, and I've commented to the mayor that continue to hear from contractor developers concerns about, and I'll just say the bureaucracy in permitting in Burlington. And I just think maybe it's time soon to revisit some of our systems and see how we are competitively to other communities. I know sometimes there's disconnects where our codes are different than the state codes, and that's a tremendous source of frustration and maybe is not bringing us the value add we need. So that's not specific to the budget, but I'm tossing that out there because I think it's important that we follow up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Councilor Grant?
Not for an extended conversation now, but I know Councilor Broderick had been in touch with you regarding the situation with UVM and issues with housing up there. I know there was some issues where students did file complaints and then trying to access, make appointments with them, that sort of thing. I guess I'd really like to see us have more of a process this year to hold them accountable for some of the issues that they have with housing in the same way that we hold other landlords accountable for the quality of housing that they have, and if they have issues with, infestation, with plumbing, etc. These were complaints that on-campus students had, which are very similar to what off-campus students have and other residents of the city. I just think that we haven't had our eye on the ball up there. We've left them to self-manage, maybe. Maybe I'm not fully understanding that correctly, but just something we should be thinking about and looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll say, if there are complaints from folks, definitely encourage them to reach out to our office. We did that with Councilor Broderick. We had a couple of complaints that came in through our permitting system. It's open for every member of the public, and definitely those students know how to use the system because they found it. But two of the three issues that were reported were actually in the dining facility areas, which wouldn't necessarily count as housing. They would more likely fall under something the state of Vermont would regulate. So we're open to reviewing to make sure that any housing in Burlington is safe. So encourage the people who are reaching out to reach out to us.
But we don't inspect, correct me if I'm wrong, do we inspect UVM dorms?
if we have a complaint, there are a number of places. We don't inspect places that are 501c3 and do their own HUD inspections either, but we can still do inspections of any unit in the city when there's a complaint.
But we don't do inspections of UVM dorms the way we would other.
We do not.
Okay. Not for this meeting, but I would like to explore that further at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Other councilors? Councilor Travers? Oh, and I see Councilor Litwin's hand too. You'll be next, Councilor Litwin.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Ward. I caught the beginning of your presentation online and glad to be here now in person with you. We heard in public comment an interesting comment with respect to possible revenues sort of left on the table from the absence of enforcement, and it wasn't specific to your area. I think it was more presented in the context of traffic enforcement, but it does seem, right, that because of staffing levels, I guess the question is, I'm curious, do you have any sense as to, as we talk about finding greater efficiencies here, because of staffing levels, because of short staffing, sort of how much has been left on the table here? And I'm glad to see that with staffing up to what's on the org chart here in FY26, that there's a plan for greater efficiency to that end. But do you have any sense of, even if fully staffed, do we still, are there still going to be sort of monies left on the table, so to speak, because there's only so many people in your department? I guess I'll just leave it there. I hope that question makes sense, and I'm just curious. And then my follow-up question to that will be, it seems that some of these positions have been vacant for a little while now, and I'm wondering if you have any feedback that you can provide with respect to where sort of recruitment and retention stands for those positions at this point. It sounds like we can hopefully be fully staffed here soon enough, but I'm also mindful of the fact that FY26 is right around the corner.
Yes, I'll try to unpack that a little bit at a time. If I miss anything, please call me on it. But I'll just share that on the revenue side, I'm not going to say that there's not more revenue that can be collected, but I will point out for the last, for the current fiscal year, we had budgeted reinspection fees. That's when we tell you to do something and you don't do it. We budgeted $15,000. We're at $21,243 as of the date of this report. So I'm sure it's higher. Next month, we have an appeal with the property owner where there's another $5,000 on the table. If that's found to be due for this period by the Housing Board of Review, then again, that number climbs further. So I think we're doing more than we've done before. Your city council just in the last few months approved 2 new people to issue tickets. They're inspectors. Both were new people, so that gives us additional revenue. We have 2 other housing inspectors that have been able to issue tickets in the past, so the capacity is there. So I expect revenues would be higher in the upcoming year. Another would be in stipulation fees. If you looked at, those are for zoning related work, and the stipulation fee that we budgeted for was $40,000. Currently, we're at $48,000 in revenue from stipulation fees. That doesn't include the Pearl Street Mobile, which we have a Supreme Court judgment now for $66,000, and another one recently for 110 Riverside for another $44,000. So I'm cautious because people try to run their appeals as long as possible. I don't want to promise it to Catherine in our budget. I think that number could be, if we, through the city attorney's office and enforcement, that stipulation number be another $100,000 from that alone. So we're there, we're ready. It's about when we get those dollars across the table, so to speak, and when they've reached all of their final appeals.
Okay, thank you for the additional information.
All set? Okay. Councilor Litwin?
Thanks, and let me know if you can't hear me. I have a little bit of a mic issue. So thank you for the presentation. I may have just missed it in the event that I did, but I'll always remember Councilor Doherty saying sometimes the people who don't pay. And so I was just curious, was there a slide where you talked about revenue versus revenue actually, like, do you break up revenue versus like fines and fees that have actually been collected, or how do you present that in this slide deck?
Well, that's not presented in this slide deck, but it will be presented for Catherine at the end of the year, because we have to let her know what we think is still collectible for the current year. Like that $5,000 that I mentioned a few minutes ago, we'll find that out when we have the appeal for that hearing. But those sort of accounts payable will be the things that we'll present to Catherine for the end of the year fiscal year report. But they're not included in this.
And so when we're building for FY26, we need to take into account whatever percentage of folks like didn't pay their reinspection fees, didn't pay their fines, and that sort of thing. Where do you see us landing this year so far?
So on the housing side, which is where those fees are, I feel like we're going to probably land above where the budget numbers are. Again, I don't like to overpromise to Catherine or the mayor, but I feel like on the housing side, because of some of that effort, we should be able to. Another area is late fees on those. We've always charged a $25 sort of base rate, but the housing manager, Cara Simino, had included the 12% interest rate. And if you look at what we collect for late filing, that number was originally budgeted at $3,000, and we've collected $22,000 already, because if people pay late, they should pay the 12% interest from the time it was due. So it's hard to budget for that in the coming year, because if that's me and I paid a $1,000 late fee on something, I'm not going to pay it next year. So I wouldn't want to build that money and say, oh, we're going to collect that much every year. I feel like people will learn their lesson. That's a hard one. We heard from a lot of people who were not happy that that was the way it was charged. It's under the ordinance, we charged it. But I feel like to build off of that number is unrealistic, because I expect a lot of those people won't do that same mistake next year.
And then do we have the authority or right to send things to collections? I know you've done larger things. You've done like liens on properties and that sort of thing. But I was just curious how your department collects on things that, you know, folks have not paid for long periods of time.
Some of them are resting either in liens or in open property records, and where we typically see those payments will be when a person refinances or when the property is closed. The property can't close with a cloud on the title, so those things hold up the sale or the turnover of the property. It's painful for the person who has to do that at the end, because they might have had what they thought was a big number in equity, and it turns out to be smaller based on these fees, but they've been properly noted in the liens at the clerk treasurer's office. They're payable to the city. I feel like we will eventually always get our money.
Okay, thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Council Litwin. We are out of time, so we're going to move on. I'm looking and no one is jumping at me yet, so we're going to move on. Bill, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our next department that we'll be hearing from is Burlington City Arts. Welcome, Doreen and Sarah. Again, about 10 minutes, and then we'll do 10 minutes for questions and answers. And food.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's always an educational evening for other department heads, listening to everything about Bill's department. I wish could know more. I'll start out with just our org chart. The next slide, Sarah. There we go. This is really for those of you who are very familiar with BCA. You could see the decrease in our staffing here. In FY25, had 19.1 FTEs, and in FY26, we will have 17.1 FTEs. Next. Highlights of this year. So, new year, new mayor, new priorities in the city. Most of the work of BCA, which comes from our mission, is then to take the priorities of the new administration and to blend our mission and our strategic plan with the mayor and the administration's goals. And a lot of that work is an ongoing, continuous improvement model, and also an opportunity to look at our slate of programs, events, education offerings to match with the priorities of the new mayor. Very much you can see here some of the pride is a focus on youth and teens, and working with the high school, significant in the loss of their high school over these last 4 years, and bringing the high school students into programming at BCA. And that was quite an extraordinary exhibition and student show, which brought many new families to BCA and to our other programs as well. We continued with City Hall Park with a significant number of free events in our continual mission, working with other departments in the city to make sure that downtown Burlington is a safe, accessible, beloved space, and an attempt to bring members of our various communities back to Burlington. We work very hard in our educational programs to create skill-building programs, and we've expanded a number of these through our educational offerings. And again, this is not something we can plan for every year, but the expansion of UVM's Tilly Drive project brought $100,000 into our budget. That was a sale of artwork that was specifically installed, and this created revenue for 36 local artists. Tonight you're experiencing, as you have in other city council meetings, the changes that were made to welcome you all to City Hall and to make this feel like a more inviting, comfortable place. And this was very much a specific project that the mayor wanted to see. And so I hope you're enjoying these 70 portraits of families that are showcased here and in the Sharon Busher room and in other rooms throughout the city. I thought it was important to highlight the interdepartmental collaborations, because this is key, I think, not only to who we are, but also to our survival as we move forward with reduced budgets in the city and with reduced federal funding, that we depend more on our colleagues. And so I wanted to highlight the work of our summer and winter market, and our team is right here, which brought probably just over 40,000 people into the downtown. There was something wonderful that happened, which is that the otter sculpture that was gifted to the city was installed in Perkins Pier. And Sarah, tell the story of reading the posts.
There's not a bigger story than what's listed here, other than that it was one of our highest performing social media posts, with the exception of the eclipse. And people just think it's absolutely adorable. So public art is always one of those things that surprises and delights.
I wonder if it's outperformed the world's tallest filing cabinet. Could be, could be. We also worked with the library in restoring the KISS Project Kate Pond's piece, which I'm sure you all know and love, and that is back on site. We used funds from the private sector, but also our 1% for public art money. And then we've really begun a pretty significant, or I should say continued a significant amount of work with the airport in their next project and advance their collections and are beginning to create additional spaces in the airport that will have rotating exhibits throughout the year. Juneteenth, a collaboration with REIB is underway, and BCA is playing a significant role in the facilitation and making sure that this event is exciting and safe and full of surprises for our community. Our cost savings. Modern Gov, we reorganized. We knew that FY26 was going to be a difficult year. We knew there was a cliff. We knew we were coming out of the loss of ARPA funds, and so there was a lot of planning on our part. And so we were able to reorganize our administrative and tasks and our fundraising, and we were able to eliminate a position. Some folks have looked at us and said, well, you didn't have the pain of losing an individual. That is true, but there were positions within BCA that we held off not rehiring because we understood we would have to do this reorg. And I guess it was prescient to know what was coming. The service inventory that the city did, we eliminated a gallery learning position. Very difficult for us because this is the person who brought many students for tours, and we're hoping to continue to do some of this work, but we've organized it differently. Other cost savings, we paused the Festival of Fools. We took a fair amount of flack in the community for this, and I think that's just because it was a beloved 3-day event, brought a lot of joy, and it's going to be missed, but I have a little update on that later. We've reduced the scale of highlight. We reduced the scale of our events in City Hall Park, and we are eliminating city funding for artist groups. That's our re-granting program. That was a $55,000 loss. And then we reorganized a regular position here to reduce salary expenses. So if you look at in the next slide, I like pie charts. Sarah likes regular charts, but
so does
but
the mayor. We have about a minute and a half left.
Ooh,
that was
boy.
my segue into just.
Thank you.
Yep, you got it.
Okay. You can see from this that where the changes are this year, significant changes in our event funding. And also, I think it shows the loss of funding that we have from the private sector in funding many of our events in the community. Next slide. Revenue and sources. We continue to stay optimistic for the coming year. We know we have to diversify our revenues, use the strength of our brand to continue to support community engagement and artist, downtown livability, and revitalization. The user fee study, this is fairly complicated. I'll tell you what I see are the top lessons here. It takes time to make changes in your fees. Last year, we did it with a bullet and not refined, and we did it too fast, but we were right before the budget was required that year. And we lost some revenue in our fall revenue. We know that now we have to be more incremental because we don't want to lose the business. We want to incorporate more an understanding of these fee changes with a greater, stronger communication plan with our community. And we're just finding more reasonable, better ways to make these changes, but to keep the quality of our programs high. You can read the threats and opportunities. I would say here, I'm just going to tell one story because I think it's important, which is we talk about harnessing the enthusiasm among local businesses to support our programs and city priorities. And Cafe Hot has been on a campaign to raise funds to bring back the Festival of Fools, or something like a much reduced... Tiny Fools. That's the new word, Tiny Fools. And they have successfully raised the budget that we gave them so that we could expand some of our programming and add back in some of the foolish behavior on one day in Burlington. The next slide is a little bit about just who the BCA Foundation is and how this has supported our capital campaign. The exciting thing is that with the support of the foundation and its volunteer members and the city's significant support, we will be opening up the community room in the South End this September. Sarah says if the HVAC gods are still with us. In summary, we've reduced FY26 by $262,000 to staff positions. And overall, if you look at our budgets from FY24 to 26, there's a $454,000 reduction. But in spite of all of those losses, we still have kept programming in City Hall Park. We've scaled down Highlight, but it's still with us. We're going to have many significant exhibitions that are of interest to our community, and we'll continue our capital campaign and expand our classes that the community is yearning for at 405 Pine Street. There are other things, but I want to be fair.
And I was going to have to wrap you up anyway. Thank you, Doreen. I appreciate it. So to counselors, questions? Counselor Carpenter always kicks us off, so.
Sorry, two different questions. Can you provide a sort of a breakout? I know obviously the community events are intended to draw people into Burlington, but your studio work, your more class work, can you tell me how many of those folks, or a guesstimate on, are Burlington citizens versus not Burlington?
So just a little over 50% of the individuals who take our classes and camps are Burlington residents. And this is the first year that we have kept the fee structure the same for Burlington residents and increased the fees for outside of Burlington. So making a distinction, and also holding places for Burlington residents and scholarships as an intentional move of the way that we take people into through registration for those classes or camps.
And do those classes and camp net out profitably?
No.
I think that would be a worthy review to sort of look at that, and whom it benefits, and I think that's a different look than the community, and how our subsidy goes for those classes and why it's not being taken up by another venue or another nonprofit. So I don't expect you to come up with the answer, but I think we really need to look.
No, what I want to say to you is that we have a very keen eye on this. So we're doing this analysis on an ongoing basis. I mean, there isn't any educational program in the country that collects 100% back from the cost of programming. And that's why we are a fundraising organization, because over 55% of the cost of those are covered by philanthropy.
And I appreciate, and I just think more, is the kiln classes making money, not making money versus this camp, those kind of things, and how many Burlington residents attend versus not. I mean, I just think we're going to have to get to a finer eye on that aspect of BCA, which is different, I believe, than the public art, public event kind of activity, which, from my perspective, ought to be targeted to bringing people into town. I mean, that's the whole goal, is come and enjoy Burlington. Let's make it a fun place. Let's support our businesses, which is very different than learning an art skill. Maybe I could go to the Sheldon Craft School, maybe I could go to BCA, you know, and I just think we're gonna have to really take that lens. The other question I was gonna ask, which I do understand you have scholarships, but do you even more specifically target any of your class programming? I hear a lot about the youth, but to seniors of low income or disabled people of low income, do you have any targeted programs for those populations?
There's always a lens of sort of who isn't coming to our classes, camps, to all of our programs, and why, what are the barriers. It not being always obviously financial, though that's a significant one. Transportation being another. Lack of awareness that the programs exist, so getting stronger communication and going deeper into the community and using, for example, trusted voices as a way to reach into communities that we may not have the same kind of access and awareness.
Do you have targeted programming through, to our new citizens? Do you have targeted programming for our new citizens?
No, they're integrated into the programming. It's not targeted. Like we adapt to the people who register for the program so that we're able to accommodate different learning styles and abilities.
Yeah. Again, I guess I would encourage you on the adult side. We're pulling back on some programming for older adults. To be blunt, they have not been very involved with your programming. I think there needs to be more collaboration. I can't speak to other folks like those with disabilities or those who are non-English speaking, but it might be good for us to look at your adult participants and try to get a better hand on, you know, who they are and who you're serving.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. I'll just note we have about 6 minutes left for remaining councilors. I'll be a little more mindful about sharing time. Councilor Barlow and then Councilor Travers. Wow, everybody at the table. Councilor Barlow, Travers, Grant, Schechter.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, and I will ask them quickly to preserve the time for everyone. The first one is, I hear the need to reduce programming to save cost, but one of the dimensions we haven't really talked about, but I've been thinking about is, and I think it probably speaks to Cafe Hot's initiative to bring back Festival of Fools. It's not just because we love these festivals and they're part of the Burlington brand, but because they actually bring people into town, and there's this benefit of that probably we get tax revenue for it, helps with gross receipts, helps bring, you know, for the people that are coming here to visit and the people that are actually participating in all these events. So I'm wondering if there's any quantification or an understanding of what that economic value is. And I'm guessing the answer is no, but have you ever thought about that and tried to understand that? So that's question 1. And question 2 is, when I looked at this slide on class, the user fee studies, and I noticed that there was the budget targets for FY25 and the actuals for FY25, understanding that the FY25 actuals were only through April 30th. They seem to be significantly down or off target. And are they? And if they are, do you attribute that to maybe inelastic demand as we raised fees and enrollment dropped? Is it related to enrollment, or?
It was related to enrollment and then also to continuing too aggressively with meeting the user fee study for this year and not able to reach that given.
So basically raising the prices drove people away from the classes. Because this is one of my concerns, not only for BCA, but for other fees within the city. You know, we're trying to raise fees to increase revenue, but what we're really doing is other people who are participating in these things and paying these fees are actually just finding other venues or other ways to spend that money. Okay. But, and then to my first question, if you don't have an answer for that now, you can respond another, offline.
Catherine can tell you that we try to get some of those numbers out of Montpelier, and the way that they're collected, we can't get them down to the fine tuning of understanding what any festival or event provides for the city. You can,
Okay, thank
use
you.
a multiplier.
Where was that? Counselor Travers.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Doreen and Sarah, for being here and for all your work at BCA, as always. This is a follow-up to Councilor Barlow's question, and specifically the line items in your budget around festivals and events, and mindful, as was acknowledged in the presentation, that it does appear that in terms of operating those events, that the budget proposes effectively cutting that budget in half. We have heard from a number of folks, including but not limited to members from the downtown business community, expressing concerns about downtown events in particular. You referenced some of it in the presentation, but I'm wondering if you could take a moment just to expand upon, with the proposed budget right now and the proposed cuts in particular to festivals and events, any sense as to specifically how that would impact your programming downtown as we look to FY26?
Well, we paused Festival of Fools, so that's the loss of a 3-day event in the downtown. It did have at its height 45 to 50,000 people coming downtown over those 3 days. We've cut back on programming in Highlight so that we're going to be present in less venues throughout the city. We're hoping to bring more partners in that might join and expand the offerings, but not things that are created from the festival structure itself. And then City Hall Park events during the summer. We had 140 events last year. I think I'm 117, and we're down to 82 events this year. So it's really, the most significant was the Festival of Fools, but the rest is shrinking the programming and trying to figure out new ways that we can deliver the quality of those programs with less funding. And of course, that we had ARPA money, so we were able to pay for security for our events. Now the cost of security is within our budgets. The cost of materials themselves have, just the cost of living increased, so the cost of the delivery of these programs is greater. There was a lot of thought that went into these cuts so that it would have the least impact on the community. We work very carefully with Cara and her team and trying to figure out how to squeeze every last dime out of every vendor. But we also lost very significant sponsors in the downtown. The entire banking community made a choice to support, and I totally understand. It's not a criticism of them, but they are supporting very different issues that are facing our community, and that funding that supported arts and culture. I think the Flynn experienced this tremendous cut as well. That money went away.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Travers. We have I gave a little extra time, but we have about 3 minutes both for questions and answers, just to keep in mind, to keep us on track. Councilor Grant and then Councilor Schechter with the last question.
Hi. First thing is more of a comment with regards to Festival of Fools. I think a lot of the flack, is the word you used, really came from it seeming like it was out of nowhere. There was really no communications in advance, and certainly as a city councilor, I would have appreciated a heads up. And I think there was a feeling in the community, kind of like what Cafe Hut is doing, like, let's see what revenue we can replace so that we can do something. And I just guess I would look at the communications to our businesses, which are really important right now, given the stress that they're under. And then I just want to give a shout out to Rock Camp. I miss that. And I think it was a great thing for youth. And Rock Camp, music is art. And it doesn't have to be rock per se. There's all kinds of music that young people listen to and like to play and like to compose. But I would like to see some kind of partnership with one of the local venues or just a local space to really expand that. I think that is something that could, in the past when we had it, there were a lot of young people that were involved. So it was able to be kept at a low cost, but the volume of kids that were involved. So I just want to throw that out there. I think that would be something to bring back to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Schechter, we're going to keep moving for you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to talk very fast.
It's okay. You have the final.
One is just a clarification question. So I know next year you've budgeted significantly less for festivals and events. Is there a decision yet on whether Festival of Fools is in next year's budget, or is that still out of next year's budget in the numbers that you've presented here?
It's out of the budget.
Okay. I wasn't sure if this year was a one-year thing or if a sort of continued.
Because it is next year, it's in August.
Festival of Fools is the first event of
I
our fiscal year.
see. Got it.
That's why.
So you're
we had to make a
preemptively.
decision about it so much sooner than we would have liked to, because we start planning for a festival in August at the end of December.
That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that. So it's the pause on Festival of Fools is reflected in next year's budget, not this year's budget.
That's right.
And so I guess that sort of ties in. So in looking at the revenue and expense or revenue pie chart you have here, it looks like there's a not insignificant decrease in registration fees from what was budgeted for this year to what's budgeted for this coming fiscal year. And is that because that's reflecting like current demand, that there were fewer, you're expecting fewer registrants? Like, is that classes and camps and things like that? Is that what those registration fees are for?
Yeah, that is.
So I guess I just wanted to make just like a comment and observation that I guess just to echo what Councilor Barlow and Councilor Travers brought up, that I do think the festivals and events in many ways bring back, like make revenue back they're so great for our city. I heard a lot of devastation when Festival of Fools was announced that it was canceled this year from all sorts of people who look forward to that event every year. So I guess I'm just a comment wondering, as registration fees are going down, like sort of what's behind the decision to maintain level funding for the education programs, but so decrease the festival, unless I'm not linking your budget documents correctly.
So we increased significantly the registration fees to reflect what came out of the user fee study, but did it too aggressively. So we aren't reaching those numbers, but it's not that it's significantly down from the year before. It's down, but it's not significant.
Okay.
The budget number was not as achievable as we hoped it would be. It was aspirational, and so it's reflected to
Got
be
it.
more accurate to what.
Got it, which is sort of,
programmatic.
okay, which is like level with prior years, not the increase you were expecting with the increase.
Still an increase over prior years. We anticipate increasing our fees every year going forward.
Yeah.
To measure it with our increasing expenses.
Okay.
So we will see increases, but we just could not make the increase that we budgeted in FY25 work.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Schechter. And with that, we're going to close our discussion on BCA. Thank you very much to both of you. Moving right along, we got some more friends to bring up to the table. We're moving now to the Community and Economic Development Office, which within it, because we're proposing this merger of BWD, which includes the Church Street Marketplace and CEDO together, this will be a joint presentation. And welcome, Cara, and also Samantha.
Hi, thank you. I'm joined by BWD Assistant Director Samantha McGinnis. And this presentation is, as the mayor noted, a combination of CEDO's budget, the Church Street Marketplace, and BWD. I've broken them out into pieces so we can see them more clearly. The merger of all of these budgets together is a little bit of a work in progress still. And as all of you probably know, the Church Street Marketplace is not a general fund budget. This is the draft, and I want to accentuate the word draft here, organizational chart for the future CEDO, the CEDO for FY26. We have over here on the right CJC, which I will highlight in the next slide. I will note here that the NPA engagement specialist is a slightly different color because the goal is to move that to the new DFA, Department of Finance and Administration. And that position, we just received a resignation, and that position is about to be vacant. You will see what you see here, what I'm highlighting for economic and community development. Those are pieces of BWD, as well as over here, you will basically see the entire Church Street Marketplace as well. We have the housing team and the lead team from CEDO, and this position all the way on the left, public-private partnerships and BCDC, that's related to some of our large development projects in the city that is currently vacant, and that would be a new position for FY26. This is the CJC organizational chart. It has not changed. There were no reductions in force for the CJC, so as I said, this remains static. I'll go through each of the three sort of divisions of the department and some highlights. The marketplace had 106 events. Those are both large and small. Large would be the holiday tree lighting, Maple Madness, Jazz Fest, which we host, we don't actually produce. And small would be things like DJs on the street for UVM graduation, or something that we call Imagination Station, which is blocks and large toys. It's sort of a PlayStation on the street that is sort of enchanting and attracts a lot of families. In order to try and re-energize the downtown, because we are aware of the challenges, we launched some new events, BTV Love Notes, which you may have seen, which got a lot of participation, and our new Maple Madness event, which was also heavily attended. Altogether, we have seen over 80,000 visitors attend our events in this past year. We also run the Love Burlington and Church Street Marketplace brands and social media. We've highlighted businesses, and you'll see at the bottom, we have a combined 4 million views on our content. We have on all of our content, all of our social media, we have approximately 80,000 followers. For business and workforce development, I will highlight, we offer a lot of technical support to our businesses, our business community, new businesses, small businesses. We supported 65 new businesses that were created in Burlington. Some of those are very small. Some of those are sometimes home-based businesses. We also created a database of Burlington businesses, which involved an intern from UVM and cataloging 745 businesses. We incubated 2 new food vendors through a pilot cart vendor incubation program that we ran with some corporate donated funds. one of the projects we're really proud of is our 0% Muslim conforming revolving loan fund. We have a 98% repayment rate. We have either created or retained 106 jobs in the community. The majority of our borrowers identify as BIPOC. We've had 29 total borrowers and 14 new businesses created through this revolving loan fund. We have loaned out over the $500,000 already because it's a revolving loan fund, so we're loaning out some of those repayments that we do receive. We're in the process of a 3-year training program with the $1.5 million from the RAISE grant, which was a grant that DPW applied for, and is related to the upgrades on Cherry and Bank, that will be coming in the coming years. This program is a combination of community partners launching this with us, Resource, Vermont Works for Women, Vermont Adult Learning, and it will train 200 people in weatherization, construction, HVAC, heat pump installation, helping our city sort of achieve our climate goals. Because we have seen that weatherization weatherization of buildings has been stymied by lack of workforce. We also ran the First Steps training program to fill gaps in our childcare workforce. 63 individuals were graduated from that program. We had multilingual participants there. We also created a sub-pool. As you know, if you have children in the school system, there are days when the teacher is sick, there are subs. Childcare programs don't have a sub-pool, so we worked to create that with community partners, and we have granted $80,000 out to childcare centers in our community, creating 14 new childcare spaces. Some of the highlights from CEDO from FY25, I want to particularly highlight a lot of the work that was done around our increased houseless population. There were staff members who ran the extreme cold weather shelter at the Miller Center. They served over 200 different individuals and saw about 75 guests each night. CEDO has continued to administer the state funding and maintain operations at the Elmwood Community Shelter. And as well, you probably know Sarah Russell, who is our Special Assistant to End Homelessness. Her statewide advocacy has been well noted and for our homeless response systems and reforms. Our lead paint program was awarded a $4 million grant to continue that program for another 4 years. The CHT post apartments at the former VFW location, you can see that project has already launched. That will result in 38 units of permanently affordable housing. The Housing Trust Fund is still constantly dispersing funds to projects to create and maintain affordable housing in the city. And also specifically want to highlight our CJC, the Community Justice Center. They served close to 2,000 people with their restorative justice. And they created a data and communications position, which has been has allowed them, and I just was meeting with Rachel Jolly this morning, the director of CJC, has really allowed them to better measure their impact. So we're hoping to be able to get some more data for you on that. And they were awarded to the Department of Corrections contract for FY26, which involves county-wide work.
We're just trying to run a little tight on time. So
Okay.
You can.
All right, so I'll just highlight some of the changes that you see in the percent change column on the right-hand side. The early learning initiative is being phased out due to Act 76, so final expenditures will occur this year. You'll see the jump in BWD admin relates to moving ELI staff into new roles in workforce development, which has been going on for about a year now as we have been winding down ELI. And what most importantly is CEDO had two budgets, general fund and non-general fund budgets. We are now just having our non-general fund budget with a large transfer of cash from the general fund that it will be easier to manage, and we'll be able to have a closer eye on our expenditures versus our revenues by combining those cash flows into one budget. Cost savings on two levels. One is from ModGov, obviously the merging of the departments. There were 7 positions eliminated. There's better management to staff ratios. The satellite accountants have moved to DFA, TCVs, and which are Trusted Community Voices, and Language Access Program, LAP, is moving to REIB. As I mentioned, our NPA work will be moving to DFA. And in terms of service inventory cost savings, we are sunsetting the Early Learning Initiative program in its entirety. Threats are definitely staff morale. These are a lot of changes, and also wanting to note that obviously we all know that CEDO is grant heavy, and we do note that in the the president's current budget, there is no CDBG and no home funds. Whether that will pass in Congress, we don't know yet, but we're keeping an eye on that. Although CDBG, we have been awarded the $700,000, I think it's 774, and that will be used in FY26. So it is the future that we're worried about. Obviously, loss of Canadian tourism, cost of housing and construction combined with high interest rates is slowing down some of these public-private partnership projects as we are trying to repencil all of this. I'll skip to opportunities, which I think is streamlining our focus of the department purely on economic development and creating these synergies and hopefully having a broader impact on the community by streamlining and merging. Briefly, again, merging these goals and pushing forward economic development goals. The city does not currently have a CEDS, which is a comprehensive economic development strategy. We have started working on that and are hoping to bring that to council in conjunction with Planning Director Dillard's overall his comprehensive plan. Housing is obviously, as you know, a focus of this administration and will be a focus of CEDO, especially noting the housing goals that were indicated by CCRPC. Moving towards sustainability in the hopes that we can move some of this work a little bit off of grant funding so that we're not as at risk. And that's it.
Sorry to rush you at the
Nope,
end.
that's
but
fine.
Well done. Okay. Questions from counselors? Counselor I'm going to start with Counselor Carpenter. She puts her hand up
I know.
first. I'm not trying to
Great.
do favoritism, just for the record. But Counselor Carpenter.
And we can talk about this in your own budget, about moving the housing position out of CEDO. Because I see housing and economic development so intertwined.
Yeah.
And the biggest gap in the city is really the housing we need to produce through private partnerships.
Yes.
We have a very strong nonprofit network. I don't worry about them. I mean, I do worry about them, but a lot. But we're very blessed that we do. The truly affordable housing will continue to be produced by them to the degree
Correct.
we have resources.
Yep.
So I really am concerned, and I can let the mayor answer that either now or later. And I just feel like it's a concern that we don't tie those two closer together. And I understand it's a focus and it's a temporary thing, but, and again, you can discuss it, but I'm telling it to you
Yeah.
as the new
Understood.
director. You're left with very small transactional housing programs, which we need to do, but they're not housing policy. They're not blended.
Well, the public-private partnership position.
That would, absolutely, and I think that's
Yes.
a key, you absolutely need to have
Yeah.
that.
And as
So-
you know, I'm currently managing the memorial project,
yep.
and so we'd be, getting someone in that
Yeah.
position that could keep oversight on the memorial project, the Secord project, also the city place as we move from ARTA 2.0 to ARTA 3.0 perhaps, and all of that as well. And I'll let the mayor address
be the future, that's just a gap in the system that have to keep our eye on. And I just am concerned about the sort of bifurcation about that. So that's my 2 cents. On some of the federal programs, I don't know, who knows what's gonna happen. There may be a wee opportunity to figure out if some of the administration could actually be contracted to the state or the other providers of those services. I understand why Burlington wanted to have them under their control, but there could be a small opportunity with the 3 programs that we ourselves administer with our own staff. So I encourage maybe a review of that.
Thank you, Council Carpenter. And I will just briefly add on to what Cara said. It's a creation of a new position. It doesn't exist now, a high-level policy strategist, if you will, similar to what Ingrid Jonas's role has been for community safety. And because housing, with creating an actual innovative strategy of all kinds of housing across departments at that level of thinking. That's why for this first year, we're going to incubate that in the mayor's office, but it will transition back into CEDO to be part of that more robust housing team that remains in CEDO for the upcoming year. As Cara mentioned, that's the public-private partnership, high-level project manager role, as well as the existing housing trust work that's done through, you saw it on the org charters, home and other and those positions. So that continues. So this is really an addition to, not addressing an actual gap that's existed.
I appreciate more discussion, but you had leadership with housing expertise, and this is nothing about the decisions on the department leadership. It's all shifted around, and Kara herself does not come with that leadership or expertise, let me put it that way, and certainly comes with leadership. And so I really hope that gets some.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Other questions on the CEDO budget? Councilor Barlow.
And thank you for that. I just had one question on the opportunities page about moving the NPAs out of CEDO, and if you could just elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. So under clerk treasurers now and under DFA and FY26, there's a lot more expertise in that department with managing those sort of community meetings. They manage elections, they manage Board of Finance, they manage city council meetings, and it's that similar sort of management, so there will be more backup in that department as well. We have had instances in CEDO where, if someone's unavailable, other people have to work nights or have to fill in, et cetera. We're sort of building more of a community engagement piece that's going to manage all of that sort of interaction. That does not preclude community engagement around the projects that CEDO does. So CEDO will have community engagement around developments and the memorial project, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And more on that to come as we get into fiscal year 26, just with that evolution. Councilor Singh?
Thank you. Thanks, Cara and Samantha, for the presentation. I just had a quick question, with regards to the marketplace budget, seeing it go down there, and that reflects not that common area fees are going down, but rather that some of the administrative costs that were partly from the general fund are now moved in CEDO leadership. Is that?
No, sorry. I was rushed by the mayor.
Wow, thanks, Cara. I'm just making sure we're all not here until 2 a.m.
I know. No, that big drop, that 800,000-ish drop that you see is basically the budget is fairly static for the Church Street Marketplace between FY25 and FY26. That large drop that you see is simply related to congressionally directed spending that we were awarded from Senator Leahy that has now finally all been expended. So we took that in, it rolled over from FY24, we took it in FY25. That's why you see it as a big revenue, because that's how we manage those accounts. We have to roll it and bring it forward. and we also expended it all in FY25, and that was the brickwork that we all saw happening, including the world map being repaired and College Street being repaired, et cetera.
Got it. Thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Travers.
Thank you, Mayor and Cara. Thank you for this presentation, and we'll have additional opportunities to do it, but congratulations as well on your announced appointment. I appreciate the mayor making you available for a number of us councilors to connect with you. I'm personally going to try to make that happen tomorrow, but if I can't make that work with my work schedule, it's certainly not any testament to the appointment. I look forward to very much to supporting your appointment on Monday. So let me start with saying that. I know on Monday, too, that we will have a work session scheduled on the proposed merger here between CEDO and Business Workforce Development. And just a note here that as I look at the proposed org chart, it appears that in some roles moving from BWD over to CEDO that there's been title changes and such, and which makes sense. But it's also a little difficult to follow, to see sort of who's moving from A to B, what positions are being maintained. You know, we've come to know, as you have, sort of who's in these roles and,
Yes.
and who's going to be fitting in where. So as we prepare for the presentation on Monday, I think it would be helpful for us to see some clear before org chart and an after org chart, including a description of if there are any title changes, sort of where are different folks fitting into the new organization.
Great. I'm happy to do that and provide that for you. I will highlight the draft, the word draft on
right.
there. So we haven't, changed people's titles just yet. It's a bit of an aspirational org chart, but yes.
Understood. A follow-up question to that, and I wouldn't necessarily expect an answer now, but maybe a follow-up for Monday is, as we received information from the administration in terms of personnel changes heading into FY26, there were a couple positions labeled in CEDO as potentially being maintained, but maybe in a different form. So, for example, there was reference to the reassignment of an ELI position, which I understand the reasons why ELI no longer exists now, but I don't know that we've received any additional follow-up in terms of what that reassignment would be and how that FTE would be reclassified. I don't know if you have any additional information along those lines, but I think it would be helpful to know that. There was also reference to, and it had I'll note, a question mark next to it, but the addition of another workforce manager position. And I see still in the org chart that there are 2 FTEs in that role, and I believe that sort of new question mark position was potentially a third FTE in this space, or is it a second? I guess my question is, are we still proposing in the budget the addition of a new workforce manager position that hasn't existed previously?
Yes and no. So as the ELI role, as Act 76 has taken effect, and Act 76 was passed by the state of Vermont. It is the child care subsidization program. That as Act 76 has taken effect, we have drastically reduced the Early Learning Initiative program. We did not feel that we could end it abruptly. Act 76 has some loopholes that Burlington was still filling, some of those specifically related to third shift workers, where Act 76 in its original form viewed third shift workers as being home during the day, which they are, but they need to sleep, et cetera. So we were still helping some of those families. However, that individual, the ELI manager, has been for the last 12 months transitioning into workforce development as we have increased our workforce development programs. We have the 1.5 million. It's an enormous program, training 200 individuals. We've also trained, as I said, 63 individuals in childcare. So as we were moving into workforce development, I have phased that individual out of ELI and into workforce development. And her title is in the process of being changed right now. But she has been doing workforce development work about probably 60 to 70% of her time already.
Okay. And then just to clarify one other point, so the reference to a new question mark or new / modify workforce manager position, is that the reclassification of the ELI program manager position, or
Yes.
or are we, okay.
We have one workforce development manager, and we are reclassing, which we have been training her over a year, the second workforce development manager. I don't know her exact title at the moment.
Okay.
So 2 workforce development employees, non-managerial.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that feedback. We will probably put names in this for Monday night.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
got
lot
that,
easier
yeah.
to track, and forgive our attempt at simplicity, but we will make it complicated. Okay, got it. We are about out of time, but is there another counselor with anyone want a final question on this particular budget? Thank you. Okay, you can, as I usually say, and I haven't actually said tonight, if you have additional questions or comments, you can send them certainly to our office or to the department head as you continue to digest the information. All right, moving right along. Thank you very much, Cara and Samantha. Moving now on to our police department. We're joined here by the chief and also Shannon, our executive manager. It's an interesting title, speaking of titles, so that's a conversation for another time. Please take it away.
I'm just waiting on some IT assistant. Despite being the largest general fund budget, our computers will not work from City Hall. But as that queues up, I just want to extend appreciation for Shannon being here with me. Shannon runs essentially the business enterprise of the police department and has been a critical member of the leadership continuity as I've taken over command of the PD.
Oh, and I'm just so appreciative. Let me offer some appreciation. Well, actually, truly, to Shannon, who has really been one of the, just to emphasize what Chief Burke just said, the continuity of this transition and institutional knowledge has been outstanding from Shannon, even from the first day I walked into the door. So I really appreciate it. And the education, even last year on this particular budget, was incredibly helpful from Shannon in particular. So thank you for holding that all year. And now, that's how you really filibuster, Chief Burke. So there you go.
That's why you're the boss. And so this is page 1 of our organizational chart. Of course, our mission at the police department is not only police service. We provide emergency communication services for both police and fire. We also have our community support officers, which is an augment to our uniform services, as well as a social service provision in our CAPE division. So here is the chief at the top of the org chart. Shannon and her team, which is really the business enterprise of the police department. Any cell that is red here just reflects a vacancy. This one happens to be the newly reinstated police reception position, which we are actively screening applicants for. The next silo here is the Crisis Advocacy and Intervention Program, which is run by Assistant Director Lacey Smith. Beneath that, we have our Community Support Liaison team. They have a supervisor and then the actual workers. Next is our Burlington Cares clinical team, which has a supervisor and also a clinician, and our domestic violence victim advocate, Marianne McAllister. Next slide, please. This is more on the law enforcement or policing side of the org chart. Again, the chief is still at the top. Our Deputy Chief of Operations is currently vacant. It's a position that we're screening applicants for. Beneath that position, we have our area lieutenants. We do have 3 area lieutenants assigned to patrol. We have our airport division. The sergeant position there is vacant, and we have our 6 officers that are required to be at the airport to adhere to TSA guidance. Our patrol sergeant team is actually 4. It needs to be 6, and that's a short-term goal. And then our patrol officer cadre itself, We have a number in here of 48. I know the number's been debated historically. The Deputy Chief of Operations and the lieutenants are supported by a assistant to the OIC, officer in charge, and also under the patrol wing, if you will, is our community service officer team, which is supervised by a manager, and it is a fully staffed team of 8 CSOs. The last silo here is Deputy Chief Labarge and the administration side of the police department. We have the admin lieutenant position, which is vacant, and that person is responsible for oversight of our records division. We do have 4 employees there. I am certain that we receive more FOIA requests and comply with more court discovery than any other department in the city. We also have our recruitment team, which is 1 police officer and 1 professional member of staff, and then our dispatch. We have a dispatch manager and then 14 communication specialists. I do believe we're carrying at least 1 or 2 vacancies there as of today. We also have our detective service branch, which encompasses really 2 groups, the detectives that work internally on drugs and general crime, and then a lieutenant that oversees the Chittenden Unit for Special Investigations. That's the team that's charged with sex crimes and also egregious acts of child abuse and neglect. And we have currently 2 detectives assigned there. Next slide, please. FY25 highlights, just basic data. This was run actually last week, 27,000 incidents as of last week, predicted to be 31,000. That's inclusive of not only patrol officers, detectives, community support officers, and CSLs. That's all of our work. And another interesting metric here is 1,408 criminal charges that have been filed by sworn police officers, projected to be slightly over 1,600 by June 30th of this year. Additional highlights for the organization: if you've driven by 1 North Avenue, you'll notice the apparent facility improvements. So we've got the canopy construction project that's underway. We have a flooring renovation that wrapped up today. Also, along with that work is some paint and trim work, and the police facility is starting to look really much better. I will say I started my career there in 1997 when it was brand new, and you could smell the fresh paint. It's nice to smell that again. And we've had a community donation to fence the north parking lot, and that project is going to start next week, actually. In FY25, the organization also entered into the second contract with Axon. That's the vendor for our body-worn camera technology, as well as our electronic control weapons, more informally known as tasers. Really the hardware there is the inexpensive piece. It was ramping up funding in FY25 to pay for adequate digital storage to comply with essentially the Vermont Public Records Act. There's strict rules on how long we have to keep that data, as well as we invested in virtual reality training, so the headsets that officers can use for lifelike training, and I think that was sum and substance the Axon contract. It is expensive technology, but it really is an expectation of the public that we train in this way, that our officers are equipped with ECWs, and certainly that any officer wearing a uniform wears a body-worn camera while they're in the field. We did substantial investments last year in training and equipment. So the equipment is kind of a one-time thing. It does have expiration dates depending on if it has ballistic qualities or that kind of thing. Now that we've had a full reset, we can do a better projection and stagger the replacement of those, so we won't need such a large investment in any given one fiscal year. And then our training is really important on 2 fronts. 1, retention. Officers like to be trained. It's a good way to hold on to your staff. 2, the public expectations that our outcomes are always perfect when we work in an imperfect space. That's a difficult, those lines are difficult to bring together on the graph, and training and resourcing our officers is the best investment that we can make in that regard. And then lastly, the department received a DPS safety grant, and it allowed our emergency response unit to receive its enhanced body armor. So different than the body armor that we wear day to day, this is for the folks that work with our emergency response unit. Next. Thank you so much. Cost savings for FY26, not shocking to anyone sitting here. When you look at our budget, 92% are humans, about 8% is operations. So we did a significant number of staff reductions. Many of these positions were vacant. I'll just walk through them quickly. Senior Network Administrator, that's an IT position that's been eliminated as we look to merge with City IT. The business manager position was a vacant position, and it's largely work that Shannon and her team has taken on. Community service officers, we had 4 vacant positions that we were going to seek funding for. Really, in looking at the data, there wasn't enough work to support those positions, so we opted to not move forward with those, and we'll remain with the 8 CSOs plus their supervisor. And then the training coordinator, that was a staffed position, but really the job description didn't match what we needed from the position, and it didn't really equate to full-time work. So right now, we're able to divvy that amongst 2 other employees. And then our PIO and Community Engagement Officer, that was a staff position, and we're going to go operationally in a different direction with our public information apparatus. There was also a cost reduction with our alignment with City IT through ModGov. And really, when you look at the amount of technology that any entity uses right now, there is inherently huge savings in the city as the larger enterprise going out and getting licenses for things like Microsoft 365 and other products that we all use. The police department's always kind of been in its own silo. It's really artifact from old criminal justice information systems rules. And given the technology that's available now, that we're very helpful, that one, we can get much better IT support from the city team, and also that the city will be able to save quite a bit of money in brokering bigger contracts. And that's it on that part. Evidence-based funding in terms of our vacant officer positions. I think some of you have heard me talk about this before. Essentially, if we have to send all of our new hires to a police academy, we can only send 4 to each class. There's only 2 classes per year, meaning 8. So we're hopeful that we're able to do that in FY26, send 4 to each class. We've budgeted for 10 total vacant positions, funding for 10 total vacant positions. Hopeful that off-cycle we can grab maybe a lateral candidate, whether that's a Vermont officer or someone from out of state that's certified that does not need to attend the academy. And then evidence-based overtime projections. The police department spends a great deal of money on overtime. It's driven largely by things outside of our control, training requirements, court appearances. We did actually do a 3-year look back on how we were spending that money, compared that to, I'll use dispatch as an example, a department like dispatch that was severely understaffed for a number of years. We were hemorrhaging money in that regard. Now that we're almost fully staffed there and they're on a 12-hour schedule, we know with great certainty that we won't be spending as much overtime there. That's just one example. Next slide, please. Revenue and expenses. Again, this is fairly simple. You'll see big reductions where our total impact on the expense ledger is been reduced $824,000. Really, that's through staff. There has been also some savings capture with the merger with City IT. If you look at department expenses, so transferring that responsibility over to City IT. Now, I'm certain that's not a net zero, but that's how Catherine will be able to work that out for you in a logical way. There's also significant, no, the other one is dispatch. I've already spoke to the projected savings there. On revenue, what's really notable here is the loss of ARPA funding. And when you boil it all off, our budget is up $436,000 for our proposed budget for FY26. Next slide. Threats and opportunity. So on the federal front, the department has 2 grants. The first is the Leahy Bulletproof Vest Grant. There's been no intimation that that's going to be problematic under this administration, but that's an unknown. And then the second part relates to our CARES team within the Cape, and that is funded in large part by a Department of Mental Health grant, and we know that that does expire in December of 2025. Tariffs, we see that as a threat. We're already starting to see like double-digit increases in the cost of ammunition, and we have to train. So that is, there's costs like that that are going to be outside of our control. Our fleet is both a threat and an opportunity. We are spending really an inordinate amount of money on maintaining cars that should no longer be in service. The opportunity will be if we're awarded the capital funds to replace the number of vehicles that we should, to bring that down and actually operationalize a logical lifespan plan for all of our vehicles. BPOA contract negotiations, contracts open with the Police Officers Association. That's also a threat and opportunity. We know it's going to be a little more expensive to ink a deal with the union, but it's also an opportunity to retain officers and to maintain management rights in operating the police department. An opportunity is our 2025 recruitment strategy. It's the first time that the department has had a published recruitment strategy with 3 silos of work. We know that applications are not just going to roll in the door to us anymore, and we actually have to train our recruiters to get out there and headhunt and engage with people, and we have to do a much better job of marketing why it's a great career at BPD, and we're very excited about that opportunity ahead of us. Again, 6 and 7 here are commingled. The training funds are always an opportunity on the retention front and just providing better police skills or employee skills to the community through better training and education. And we also desperately need to invest in leadership development to provide succession planning within the organization. Next, please. In summary, again, on the general fund expenses, down about $824,000. Revenues down, those ARPA funds largely, with a obligation increase net of $436,000. This represents essentially no reduction in services. I will jump to under key projects. When we talk about no reduction in services, we do have our priority response plan, which we're going to begin to untangle a little bit. We know that we won't be able to do everything that we want to do in that work, but we aim to provide better customer service to the community. Other key projects coming up in FY26 is the investment in our IT services, consolidations of services with city IT taking the lead on our building, and capital projects involving our failing HVAC system and our locker room situation. Both of the locker rooms have remained essentially unchanged for the last 30 years and are in desperate need of facelift. Staffing, currently we have 109 employees, again, 9 CSOs, 10 total employees in the Cape. I think dispatch is actually 12 as of today. I'm sorry about that. Professional staff, 14, and then sworn officers, 62. Next. And then questions, I can be proactive here with the ACO question that was posed earlier in public forum. And I will say that the budget does not necessarily designate a new position for animal control function. That is a function of our community support, our community service officers. That whole team is trained and function in that capacity for the city. We do have them enrolled in a training that's going to occur the end of June. I forget the exact number of folks that are going down to Vermont Law School for a training that's being put on by VLCT in terms of how the ACO assists police departments, and this is part of an overarching legislative effort that was really placed upon the Department of Public Safety last biennium, where DPS has been charged with kind of getting a handle on animal control investigations and how different communities, different counties approach this work, because it's vastly different. I will say that we have learned recently of a huge threat in the ACO world. Our long-standing contract with our kennel, which is dog-specific, once that contract expires in June of this year, they are no longer going to be in business. Our CSO manager has been charged with trying to find an alternative kennel. The challenge there is most kennels will not accept the dogs with unknown vaccination status. So we're trying to work through that there. I am very I don't want to say sympathetic, but I feel what the constituent has shared with me directly and shared here tonight about the intent of their work on the ordinance committee. And I don't want to sit here and say that we're looking to shrug this or not do it right, but I will say that we do have the people committed to this. We do have to find some better partners to help us with things such as kenneling or other animals that we encounter. And this is something that we're all facing in Chittenden County. I knew when I was sitting as the South Burlington Police Chief that this was likely the year that the kennel that we all use was going to close. Every once in a while, the kennel operator would tell us that, but then reopen on July 1. It's very clear that that kennel is not going to be open this year. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief, and I appreciate you picking that question up from public comment. Councilors, questions? Councilor Grant.
Hi, thank you so much for being here, and your patience, and special shout out to Shannon, because I agree with everything. And I know that personally you've been my lifeline of information over the last couple of years. The line item that says quote unquote professional and consultant services, contractual services, is that where we're putting the contract with the social media company?
You want to take it?
I
You know
can,
it.
if you'd like. No. The professional consultant and contractual services are for things like dog impounding.
Okay.
So that's where that comes from. It's also for towing vehicles. Our canine program is run out of that, meaning our canines' vet bills, food bills, boarding bills. It also, in the past, has paid for some of the high visibility contracts. We had one in last fiscal year with VSP, and then this year we also supported DPW with the parking garage, the sheriffs that they hired. That came from that line item, and things like generator services and stuff comes from there. The recruitment initiative will come from the recruitment fund, and those funds are separate from our general fund, but those will roll over again, what's unused, and so that contract will come from those funds.
So you have an idea of how much is rolling over?
350,000.
350,000, okay, so that's how much it went unused. And with regards to the company that was selected, so I understand there was a shift to a Vermont-based company, and I'm just, I just want some clarity in terms of, we didn't do an RFP, and then there was talk of doing an exemption for having an RFP, and then I don't know what happened with that, or did I miss that? Could be possible with everything that's been going on. Do we just sign with them and now we're obligated?
We haven't signed with them.
Okay.
I think that the chief's recruitment plan and the proposal, we will work to address to work with them on a case-by-case basis for some of the recruitment initiatives, like visiting colleges and running events for those areas specific.
Okay,
So
which is what we had talked about last week. Great. Thank you.
So we haven't signed that contract, any contract with them. We did a trial run when they did a recruitment event down at John Jay College, and we had really great data and feedback, and results from the data, at least, was promising. But we haven't signed anything for currently with them yet. I can address, before there was an RFP that was put out 2 years ago that resulted in very, very high proposals. The administration at that time didn't want to move forward with those proposals, and so that is essentially the money plus the additional funds that the council allocated for this fiscal year, some of which have been used for recruitment videos and things like that.
Okay, great. Would love to see those. I haven't checked in the last few weeks, but would love to see those finalized videos, just to know they're out there, and I think all the city councilors would be willing to share them and things like that. I am very excited to talk to the Public Safety Committee meeting tomorrow about the document that was shared, and then I'm going to share the meeting with my fellow councilors, because it's really important, and I just kind of was like, I just the things that have been asked for quite some time, and the whole, you got the whole digital thing down, and I was just like, yes. So I'm very excited about that, and I think that's going to help our department and help our city in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Barlow.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for following up on the questions that were asked in public comment tonight about the animal control ordinance changes. I just had a follow-up on that, which is, as you get more clarity on a replacement kennel and perhaps other accommodations for the other pets that are contemplated or animals that are contemplated in the ordinance, could you just keep us apprised of that? In related, I guess, could you also, I was looking through the budget and I couldn't figure out where the money for this particular line item might be, and if you're going to have to find a replacement kennel and additional capability, I'm wondering if you need more money in your budget for that particular ordinance.
That's going to have to be a bit of wait and see, because we don't even have anyone that's really talking to us seriously about meeting our full needs. So, and again, it'll be in the contract service line, and I'm certain that if we need to do some type of mid-term adjustment by working with Catherine, we should be able to figure that out. Unfortunately, police departments across the country are, attrition rich at times, and I don't think we'll have any trouble of keeping our budget overall within the big number.
Okay, thank you very much.
And happy to provide updates as I get those from the CSO manager.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor Carpenter. Back to the mic. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
The contract with the Department of Mental Health, how much of a threat do you think that is? And do you happen to know the source of the funding?
The ultimate source of the funding, I don't know. I know the contract is about $300,000.
Would you happen to know that, Catherine or Mayor? The CAPE money from the state, I'm just curious. I don't want to panic, but it ought to be somewhere by now, I would think, since the state just passed its budget.
So this grant award expires in December. So we've got-
Understood, so is it in the state budget for the following 6 months?
Well, I think I'm going to jump in for a second. We're going to, first of all, we can follow up with more information
Yeah.
on this. Another piece of this that's outside the constraints of a budget presentation are continued cross-department conversations around public health delivery as part of our community safety response. There's more to come there that both chiefs have been working on alongside Ingrid. Conversation coming soon, so hold that question. I would encourage
I mean, I just
people
was
to
a
be able to
little-
go more depth around our more coordinated approach that will roll into fiscal year 26.
Yeah. And I so appreciate the approach. I just don't want us to be short $300,000. And if there's a minute of lobbying just around the money, not the program, but,
Sure.
and I guess I was also curious whether it was Medicaid at all, which would be a threat.
We can get you that information about the existing grant. Yep, thank you. Councilor Travers.
Thank you. It's mainly a comment, and then I would be happy to follow up unless you have some thoughts right now. I think, again, as I look to the budget in coordination with the potential personnel actions that were coming up here for FY26, my biggest concern was the extent to which tasks done by non-uniform personnel were going to fall to uniform personnel. Unfortunately, it is an attrition-rich profession, and we continue to struggle with short staffing. And so as we look to roles like training and special project coordination, as we look to the public information officer, I am wondering if you would be able to expand upon whether you share concerns around really the bandwidth of sworn officers being able to take that on top of what seems to be an already very full schedule. And then a more specific follow-up on this, and it may be a question for your department, it may be something to coordinate with the mayor's office and the city attorney's office as well. A sort of common refrain that we have heard from our police commission in particular is a want for more steady staffing for the work that they do. I'm wondering whether or not any of the personnel changes that are contemplated by the FY26 budget will have impact on that. We have a lot of turnover coming up on our police commission, and I envision they're more now than ever needing to have some additional dedicated staff support. And again, not necessarily something you need to answer right now, but something that I do want to make sure is contemplated as we approve the FY26 budget. Thank you.
Certainly, I will be succinct. We'll table the police commission thought for right now, and I will definitely get you an answer in that regard. In terms of the training coordinator work, we've been able to split that between two professional staff members. That has zero impact on sworn officer availability. Public information, I really think that we just need to get back to the basics, and we empower our OICs to issue press releases as will be prescribed by a new policy, and I plan on serving as the primary public information officer and training other command staff members as an intentional part of our succession planning moving forward. It's critical at times that a community hears from their chief executive, especially when the incidents are not great, and that's work I'm comfortable in doing. I understand that that's part of being a chief, and I have to help others develop in the organization so they see the clarity and the importance in that same work.
Thank you, Councilor Travers. Before we go to you, Councilor Grant, for a second pass, I just want to, because we are also just about at time, any other final questions from a councilor who has not asked one yet? Okay, Councilor Grant, you know how to be in touch with the chief, so I'm just going to if you could be very just brief, because we want to move on to our last one. Thank you.
Got it. Just to speak to what you just said, I want you to know it's being noticed. I literally walking in here tonight, someone walking up to me, it's being noticed. And so people are very appreciative of it. I think also what we have right now is you've got a plan, and that is really, really important. And it's just about how we work to make sure that people know what that plan is, because things are, I believe, are finally going to be very different from what's been happening the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Shannon. Moving on now to someone I see more frequently than pretty much any member of my family, my chief of staff from the. I don't know if that's the appropriate response, because I think we both need to see our families more. But our last budget of the night is the mayor's budget. I do want to note that we did communicate to Board of Finance. And just for other counselors following along, the regional programs, which is actually the last budget, will be at the Board of Finance presentation on Monday. We needed a little bit more time on June 2nd. So I think that, do we do the non-department? We'll do that one on Monday as well. So there's two. I'm just being thorough. I thought there was no need to panic. I know Catherine really well too. There's two actual remaining ones for those who track every single but how we structure each of the budgets. And so both regional programs and non-department budget, which I feel like I'm still not saying correctly, but it will be on Monday, June 2nd. So this is the final one for tonight, which is the mayor's office, a small but mighty office, and my chief of staff, Aaron Jacobson, will be leading us through this one. Thank you, Aaron. And if you want to turn on your mic, that would be great.
Turn on my mic. All the tools. Okay, is this sharing? Yes. Yes. Okay, great. Good evening, counselors in the room and on Zoom. It is Wednesday, May 28th. Yes. Okay, here is our beautiful little office. A couple of things to point out that are new in FY26. We will be bringing Sarah Russell, our Special Assistant to End Homelessness, into the mayor's office. We have added, somewhat recently, Teresa Vecina, as you know, our Special Assistant on OPC implementation. We also have Ingrid Jonas, our Senior Policy Advisor on Community Safety. And we will have our Senior Policy Advisor on Housing. We see all of those kind of special policy advisors as working in concert together around some overlapping and connected issues, and so we think that makes a lot of sense. As to the Senior Policy Advisor on Housing, and I think this came up in the CEDO presentation, but we would envision that being kind of incubated in the mayor's office for the coming FY26 year, then maybe moving over to CEDO. But again, with that Senior Policy Advisor on Housing being in the mayor's office, that means they can easily connect also with Teresa, with Ingrid, with Sarah Russell, And likewise, we can have an interdepartmental approach where that person can also easily be connecting with the CEDO folks, with planning, with DPW, with others. We also will have an 0.5 FTE to hire, currently vacant, who will be working to support Sarah Russell's work. And that position was a move with the recent reduction in force. That used to be a full-time position. We looked at the service inventory and determined that Sarah Russell definitely needed assistance with that work, but it could move to a 0.5 FTE. Highlights, so many that the font is very tiny. I will just hit on a few because you all can read, but it's been repeated over and over and over again, but also important to remember that it was just about a year ago that we started communicating this administration's top 3 priorities, and those priorities remain: community safety, safe and affordable housing of all kinds for all folks, and climate sustainability and resiliency. One of the first fun projects we got to do last year was to close a $14.2 million budget gap. We then hired Ingrid Jonas, Teresa Vecina, and we have launched a lot of advisory groups, which has been an incredible boon to our office and the city as a whole. We have budget advisors, community safety advisors, tax fairness working group, and a climate advisors group. Those are iterative groups that come and go in the sense that budget advisors have been convened twice because we've looked at 2 budgets. We're talking about bringing back our community safety advisors to think about some newer issues that we want them to revisit. The tax fairness working group is ongoing, and our climate advisor group is also ongoing. We've also implemented really important processes that we did not have when we began, which are department head goal setting and department head 360 evaluation reviews. Those have been incredibly instructive, both in terms of how we can all work together better to achieve shared goals, but also to have an evaluative process that helped inform decisions that we made this year and will need to make in future years. We also have the Modern Gov initiative, which you all know about, and that is connected also to the service inventory. Again, those are tools that we will continue to use in future years. We stewarded the emergency cold weather shelter that was had, I would say, a more humane threshold than the state's threshold of -20 degrees. We earned 75% voter support on the GO bond and the water and lake bonds in connection and collaboration with City Council. We appointed our Chief Burke, who was just sitting here, and we've had 4 bi-monthly public forums on community safety, the 5th one being tomorrow at the library, which will focus on homelessness and mental health, as well as what's not on this slide is a component of the evening will focus on issues connected to the downtown. Well, we didn't have a lot of money in our budget to cut. We did find some cuts last year. We've continued those cuts into FY26. It's a very, very skinny budget that is primarily personnel related. We occasionally do buy bagels for department heads meetings, and I guess we can buy fewer bagels if we have fewer department heads in FY26, right? Because a couple will be in DFA. So that's like 2 fewer bagels. Really, though, we just don't have a lot of meat in our little baby budget that we can find savings from. As I mentioned, primarily our budget is made up of our personnel costs, and so the increase in our budget for FY26 is really just related to the FICA adjustment. Threats and opportunities for our office. I can speak from personal experience that I think one of the threats continues to be that we're understaffed. We have incredibly demanding workloads, and I would also say that I think our office's staff is underpaid if you consider the number of hours we actually work, the extent of our supervisory duties, and just the complexity of the work itself. Another threat, this isn't a serious threat, but our Teresa Vecina is still paid partly by the opioid settlement fund, and that will hopefully not be continuing into FY26, or at least not the greatest portion of her of the budget for her position. But that is a fund that will expire in years in the future. Lots of opportunities. Our staff, our senior advisor on community safety will drop to 10 hours per week. That's an opportunity saving for the budget, but that's also was by design. Ingrid's job is really to work herself out of a job. In other words, to help us devise, design, and implement community safety policies such that those policies are being operationalized across the city, whether you're talking about in our city departments or our community partners. And so then we won't need Ingrid Jonas to be kind of helping us devise and implement that work. And that would, her reduction in hours would start at the beginning of her 2-year mark, which is the beginning of September. We will be looking to hire an intern in the fall that could gain college credits versus being paid internship with city funds. And another opportunity is really, again, connected to our department head annual goal setting and the 360 evaluation review process, which is just seeing more cohesion and collaboration across departments. And again, from the learnings that we've gained from the goal setting and 360 processes, we've been able to make more informed decisions about delegation of duties. Who has what strengths? How can departments collaborate with each other? How can we call on other department heads or other city staff to help out when others might be overloaded? And we have established a really good working relationship across departments that way. We have done a lot of work the past year that I think a lot of people don't see. We've done a lot of kind of policy-based or protocol-based work, like the goal setting, like 360 evaluation reviews, where there just weren't policies or procedures. We've been drafting those, establishing those, implementing those. We've certainly done a lot of work around community safety in the past year, and I think that is starting to bear fruit. Certainly the hiring of Chief Burke, and in conjunction with everything that Ingrid Jonas has been working on, good collaboration with the fire department, with our ability to make sure that Howard Center street outreach is well-funded and can survive and thrive in our community. Rolling out situation tables in the coming year, revamping CommStat in the coming year. All of this is going to start to become really visible, and it's been a lot of behind-the-scenes work, and that's just on community safety as one example. Looking ahead in year 2 to really being able to hit the ground running with more housing-related work. And again, there's really exciting opportunities there that we will get to start to take advantage of in our public-private partnerships. We're going to see developments finished. We're going to see people moving into some of the housing that's been underway for a long time. Hopefully we'll see some road construction projects wrapping up and starting to bear fruit too. So looking forward to year 2, looking forward to year 3, really in a very as tough as things are right now or can feel right now, really feeling optimistic about what this community is going to look like in a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And I feel like we've done a lot of really good groundwork this past year. In sum, like I said, our budget grew just primarily due to FICA adjustments, and we look forward to making progress on our senior advisor on housing by September 2025. And the few cuts that we were able to find from FY25, we did carry into FY26. So our budget really did not grow significantly outside of hiring a senior advisor on housing. And with the reduction in hours of Ingrid's position, there's some reduction there too.
Thank you.
Happy to take questions. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. All right, to counselors, questions? Counselor Carpenter.
A couple of things. They're sort of wrapped in, this is really on the senior advisor issues. And you, as you well pointed out, the Special Advisor for Public Safety saw the need for it. Their goal is to work themselves out of a job. Makes perfect sense. We have 3 public safety departments overlapping. How are they going to work? The Special Advisor on the OPC, presumably they're going to work themselves out of a job once we get it funded. And you made a sidebar comment about being paid out of opioid money and not. So I'm curious, do we have a budget? I mean, how much city money is involved or potentially involved? If you can't answer that this minute, I'd just be curious about if there's an expectation that we, the city, have to pay for these services.
That's a great question, Councilor Carpenter. So Teresa Vecina's position is currently paid out of opioid settlement funds. Moving into the future after July, well, I guess we don't know exactly when after July 1, but when we get the funding from the state of Vermont connected to the Overdose Prevention Center work, the funding that will be coming from the Department of Health, that will then pay for Teresa Vecina's position. And that is per statute, that we are allowed to use some of the funding that the city of Burlington will get for the Overdose Prevention Center implementation, well, design and implementation. The city gets some of that funding to pay for a position like Teresa's. In addition, we're also hoping to add a few hours a week to Teresa's current 20 hours per week so that she can help us administer and manage the ComStat group that will be revamped in July. We really need someone who can kind of hold that group, especially in its new iteration, which will then help also inform situation tables, which will help us inform our whole response system in a very data-informed way. But that, in order for that to be successful, it needs someone in our office who can help manage that. And that would just be a small portion of Teresa's work, and that work could be paid for out of opioid settlement funds, but not the money that's coming from the state to support the OPC work. But we have plenty of opioid settlement funds to pay for a portion of Teresa into several years into the future.
And then my third comment, which is my concern, the city of Burlington needs a housing expert, a housing person, very indefinitely. It's not a position that you're going to work yourself out of. I worked in it for 40 years and I didn't work myself out of the position. And so I am really concerned, and I understand value of coordination, but a disconnect. This is a person, I would hope, with good expertise in the city for the long term, who can build the trust of the partners we need in the community. And I just don't feel like a special assistant is the right approach for that. It needs to be a professional enough position with enough expertise to get at it. And that's somewhat different than a focus on the unhoused. I probably could argue that should not belong in the mayor's office, but I understand the immediacy of what we're trying to deal with this year. So I'm sort of trying to separate those two. And maybe I'm just visioning as a special assistant on housing differently than, I would. Housing is a long game. It takes us forever to build housing.
Fully
It's
agree
not a
with you.
one-year thing.
Fully agree with you, and maybe this is where titles matter. I'm really thinking of the housing person as being like the chief housing advisor for the whole city. For CEDO in particular, after this person is no longer in the mayor's office. But it's not, you're right, building more housing of all kinds in the city of Burlington is not a 2-year job. It's not a discrete project. It would be ongoing, and it has multiple connections to other departments and multiple connections to other important projects that the city will be undertaking. For example, when we update our comprehensive plan, certainly the housing person would be very closely involved with that. And so I agree. We're not envisioning that this is somebody who will work themselves out of a job. I mean, that would be great. I don't see that happening anytime soon. Certainly not like with Teresa or Ingrid, where it's a 2-year-ish role. That's not the vision. So I do appreciate that and agree with you.
Well, just my caution in
Councilor
raising
Carpenter, I
it
just
that
want to
way.
make sure there's time for other counselors too, so we're starting to
Thank
run low on time. Yep. Oh, thank you. Okay, we can follow up more, but there's much more to talk about on this one, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Other questions from counselors? Counselor Travers.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Aaron. Just a couple quick questions. One is, we've heard in your presentation, other presentations with respect to the expanded investment in the Howard Center, and I just want to confirm here, is that something we should anticipate reflected in the regional programs budget next week?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you for confirming that. I also want to confirm with respect to the senior advisor on public safety, again, just to confirm, that is a position that we funded for 2 years in FY25, correct? And so do we see those monies reflected in the FY26 budget, or is it carryover from FY25 into FY26? Specifically, I'm looking at the line item on professional and consultant services from FY25, which has gone from $125,000 to nothing. If I remember correctly, I think that position was the senior advisor on public safety, and I'm just confirming, is that a position that's already funded through FY26 with the FY25 budget?
That's correct. I mean, Catherine's nodding, so I'm like 90% sure on this, but that's right, and that's why the $125,000 figure is full-time for 1 year and very, very part-time for a year or two. Isn't that correct?
There was confusion when last year, and we put that into professional and consulting services because we did not know the nature of how they would be hired. I think the intention was that was going to cover part-time, it's not salary because it's consulting, but the part-time fees for both Teresa and for Ingrid. In reality, they've been hired as part-time employees. So you may also see a budget amendment that might not need to come to you for this year. But so what you'll see in the budget is nothing under professional and consulting services, but a huge increase under part-time employees. So last year's money goes away, anything under the operating budget. So even if there's leftover money, which there probably will be from the 125, that'll go back to the pot. And then you'll just see a new obligation under part-time.
Okay, to follow up on that some, I guess what I'm wondering here is that there's a number of FTEs that are proposed to be added to the mayor's office here. So we see the safety advisor position no longer reflected in the contractual services line item. We see a significant increase in seasonal temporary employment. The regular full-time salaries remain largely flat year to year, but we also see Ingrid's position, we see the senior advisor on housing position, we see Sarah Russell's position, we see Teresa's position, we see a 0.5 FTE position potentially to continue working with Sarah Russell. Is that all reflected in the additional $200,000 on the seasonal temporary line item, or are there additional
Yes.
monies? Okay.
No, it is all in there.
Okay. All right. I'll mention one other item, just in transparency, as we continue around this budget, and it's a follow-up on what Councilor Carpenter was saying, I certainly understand the good reasoning that you've laid out in terms of wanting a number of these positions to move into the mayor's office. Many of these positions, though, are roles that for a number of years now have historically remained in CEDO. The substance use analyst position under the prior administration was a CEDO position. Sarah Russell's position was a CEDO position. Much of the city's housing work has come either from CEDO or I would say from our planning department. I will mention I have some concerns around the or some questions, I should say, around how the senior advisor on housing position is going to work in collaboration and partnership with our planning director that I think historically has done in recent years a lot of innovative work in the housing front. And as we move business and workforce development back into CEDO, I do have questions around the extent to which that merger is in any way diluting CEDO's historical mission here. And so I don't necessarily expect the full follow-up right now, but as we move forward from this, I have some question marks about ensuring that this movement allows for CEDO across multiple administrations for a long time to come to maintain a lot of those core missions. Thank you.
I'll just respond briefly that I think you make a really valid point about the core mission of CEDO. And then you also mentioned how, for example, Scott Pavek's position was in CEDO, but I don't necessarily know if that position made sense with the core mission of CEDO. And I think over a few years, CEDO did become a department where there were some positions that you could validly ask whether that made sense with the core mission of CEDO. So we're keeping that very much in mind as we do this merger. What is the core mission of CEDO? And I'm hearing a lot of questions around the senior housing policy person, so heard and understood, and I think these are good questions. I will tell you that I've already spoken with the planning director about this, the housing advisor's job description. We're not just going to rush that process. We want to be very deliberative and collaborative regarding that person's job description and what they do and how they work across departments. And so whether that person goes back into CEDO or not, or when, I think that makes sense. I think that's a good question. But we also are simultaneously keeping in mind that we are building towards having a much more cohesive community health response system, which does include people like Teresa Vicina, Ingrid Jonas, Sarah Russell, the 0.5 FTE who works with Sarah Russell, as well as community partners. So as we're thinking about our community health approach, there could be a shift there too, where there's not just necessarily advisors in the mayor's office, but possibly a division who has some leadership who can really make sure that we have a good community health and safety response system.
Thank you, Erin. And we are about at time, but you definitely know how to reach us. Oh, Councilor Grant. Is it brief? Oh, and Councilor Litwin, I'm sorry, I didn't see that hand. We're going to go to Councilor Litwin and then Councilor Grant. I will just give you, I'm going to beg 8 more minutes. How about that, of people's time before we wrap this up? Councilor Litwin and then Councilor Grant, and then we'll be done.
Thanks. And given the time, I will just say, add my name to the list of questions and concerns that Councilors Travers and Carpenter just had, because I had similar ones. One of the things that you said, Erin, was that you felt that the staff in the mayor's office was underpaid based on the workload that you had. And so I guess my question then is, with all the departments that have been asked to sort of do a workflow assessment and figure out what work stops in the mayor's office if that's the case?
Appreciate your question, Councilor Litwin. I don't know. And I think the mayor's office has been historically understaffed. I don't think this is a new thing. But certainly was not a budget year where we were going to advocate for an increase in pay or an increase in staff. I think your question is a good one, and I'm going to take it under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. Councilor Grant.
I guess my comment would be, I respect the questions and concerns that were brought forward, but as being a council for the Central District and watching what's been happening, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, and there's no change. We have to change things up, and I appreciate this mayor's office changing things up in order to address the issues that, as we all know, have been affecting our residents, our businesses, and I think we should really have some patience to see how this works out. I mean, these are hiring people that we need to be looking at very specific things that we know are big concerns. So I guess I'll leave it at that. I think that we need out-of-the-box thinking. I think that's what we have here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. All right, colleagues, and with that, we are out of time. And again, you know how to reach all department heads, including my chief of staff in our office for additional follow-up questions. We are at the end of our agenda, and with no other business on the agenda, I will adjourn the Board of Finance at 8:06 p.m. Thank you very much.